Hey y'all, Gary here with Tennessee Stands. And look, just another video today with a little bit of election campaign shenanigans going on, this time in the Tri-Cities area in Northeast Tennessee. And this having to do with the race between in the Republican primary between Bobby Harshbarger, who's a conservative, challenging incumbent Republican Senator Jon Lundberg. And so apparently there's a PAC out in that area called the East Tennessee Conservatives, who is supporting Bobby Harshbarger, who's not really happy about Jon Lundberg's prior voting record. And so they're sending out some text to voters in those areas, letting them know about Jon Lundberg's record. Well, he doesn't like that, of course. No incumbent likes to be talked about, likes their voting record put out in the public view. So here's what he had to say.
He's questioning whether East Tennessee Conservatives PAC, a political action committee behind it, and other critical text ads has crossed ethical lines.
Collusion between a PAC and a campaign is illegal, and potentially skirting around campaign finance limits.
Lundberg says that's a question worth asking because the PAC's treasurer, Thomas Datweiler,
runs this PAC. Runs Congresswoman Harshbarger's congressional campaign, runs her leadership PAC. There's enough questions that I think it merits some further investigation in Tennessee.
And this is going to be interesting for me because I was wrapped up in a very similar situation in my campaign against Majority Leader Senator Jack Johnson back in 2022. And of course, there was a complaint filed against me from Jack's camp. There was a complaint, a 52-page sworn affidavit, ethics complaint filed against Jack Johnson in his campaign. And I'll show you the outcome and how that went and how I speculate things might go for Bobby Harshbarger. We'll see. But, you know, no one cared back then. Leadership didn't care that Jack Johnson was colluding with other PACs to maliciously attack me in my campaign. Nobody cared. Nobody cared if there was collusion or coordination. They just shoved it under the rug. But now, since there's possible collusion against the incumbent, well, you have other senators coming to the rescue, like Senator Ken Yeager, who filed this complaint on behalf of his buddy Jon Lundberg. Listen to this.
Lundberg passed his concerns on to Senate Republican leader Ken Yeager, who submitted this sworn complaint to the Registry of Election Finance. Yeager told us in a statement, quote, "I believe the various connections between the Bobby Harshbarger campaign and the East Tennessee Conservatives PAC need to be scrutinized, and this complaint was the best way I knew to do that."
And of course, you know, he just wants them to dig into it, right? So what I want to do, I'm going to show you some of these connections. And here's some things you need to know about this race, because the interesting thing that I find is that Jon Lundberg is accusing the Harshbarger campaign of coordinating or colluding with a PAC, saying that there's these relationships with the PAC treasurer and other PACs. But interestingly, what they're not concerned about is that Jon Lundberg hired Blake Harris as his campaign manager. And why is that important? So Blake Harris was previously Governor Bill Lee's campaign manager and also his chief of staff for a brief time until Bill Lee ran for re-election again. Blake Harris then resigned, passed off the torch, and now runs a political consulting firm and is running Jon Lundberg's campaign. But why is Blake Harris important? Well, the ethics complaint that was filed to the Tennessee Registry of Election Finance, their general counsel and attorney is a woman named Lauren Topping. Well, Lauren is married to David Topping, and you're going to see it's just, you know, when you get into politics, it's just one big happy family. So David Topping was a former full-time research director, which means he does opposition research. He does the dirty work, right, for campaigns. So he was a full-time research director for the Tennessee Republican Party. Later went on to work for the Secretary of State. Then was a campaign manager for Bill Lee, which I'm sure is where he got to know Blake Harris really, really well. He was an opposition research director for Tim Scott's presidential campaign, and now works full-time for Blake Harris's opposition research firm. and political consulting firm. Why is that important? Well, just connect the dots here for a minute, because Senator Lundberg is accusing the Harshbarger campaign of all of these political connections, and that's bad. You can't do that here in the state of Tennessee yet. All right? There is a complaint being filed against Harshbarger from the Lundberg camp, which will be adjudicated by the wife of the full-time opposition research guy for Jon Lundberg's campaign manager. So the campaign manager and the woman who is the general counsel for the registry, for the ethics board, for the state, they play on the same team. And they're going to be deciding whether or not to move forward with an investigation against Jon Lundberg's opponent, Bobby Harshbarger. But nobody cares about those connections. But let's move on to some other connections that are important, because that sort of plays into what happened in my race. So I'm going to go back to my 2022 race against Jack Johnson. In 2023, the Tennessee Conservative News reported extensively that official financial records provided evidence of undisclosed affiliations between Senator Johnson's campaign and political action committees that attacked me during my campaign. By the way, committees that sent ridiculous mailers like this, lovely mailer with the Siamese head, makes me look really great. That's kind of their intent, right? But Grifter Gary, don't vote for Grifter Gary Humble. We can't afford another lobbyist in Nashville. By the way, paid for by the lobbyists in Nashville. Grifter Gary Humble. Grifter Gary Humble has a long history of selling out conservatives. Don't vote for Grifter Gary. So these two mailers in my county were sent out by a PAC called the Tennessee Conservatives PAC, which, by the way, just so happened to form and start raising money for the first time during the primary when I was running against Jack. And by the way, as I progressed down the road, to date, the only thing that PAC has ever done in its entire existence is send these two mailers against me in 2022. So I'm going to go back to some of these connections. Why are those connections important? Well, because Jack Johnson's campaign was run by a guy named Ward Baker, who also runs campaigns for Marsha Blackburn, for Bill Hagerty, and was running the campaign for Morgan Ortagus for the Congressional 5th District, the carpetbagger that Donald Trump dropped in here to run against Andy Ogles for Congress. And then there's this Tennessee Conservatives PAC. But why are these connections important? Because this is the same accusation that Lundberg is making on this other PAC. And here's the connection. Ward Baker, who runs all of these PACs and was running my opponent, Jack Johnson's campaign, uses a guy named Les Williamson out of Houston, Texas, on all of his PACs that he runs. Les Williamson is the treasurer for the Marsha PAC. He's the treasurer for the Bill Hagerty PAC. He was the treasurer for the Team Morgan Ortagus PAC for Congress. And he just also happens to be the treasurer for the Tennessee Conservatives PAC, who all they did in their entire existence was attack me in 2022. Now, I'm going to play you a couple of clips from the hearing that the registry had on this issue. There was a 52-page sworn affidavit and a 52-page ethics complaint filed with tons of evidence on how the Jack Johnson campaign was connected to Ward Baker and how Ward Baker was colluding with these PACs that were moving money around to maliciously attack and malign me during my campaign. Watch this first clip.
There was a request before the meeting to postpone that.
I might suggest we go ahead and just deal with it and make it go away, because I don't find Lauren, you've looked at this.
Now that's attorney Tom Lawless. And Tom Lawless, see, they wanted to kick the can down the road, and they didn't really want to hear the complaint against Jack. But Tom Lawless decided, and if you heard his quote, he said, you know what, let's just go ahead and bring this up so that we can make it go away, is how they introduced the complaint against Jack Johnson. Let's go ahead and take care of this so we can make it go away. Well, why would Tom Lawless want to make this go away? Well, it just so happens that Tom is the member of the 6-member board that is appointed by the Senate Republican caucus. Well, who runs the Senate Republican caucus? Well, the majority leader, Senator Jack Johnson, my opponent. Isn't that fantastic? Listen to this next clip.
To the issue of coordination, the complaint, quote, alleges, Tennessee law does not allow candidates' campaigns to coordinate efforts with PACs on supporting or opposing political candidates, end quote. However, that characterization, in my opinion, demonstrates a misunderstanding of Tennessee law. There is no law that prohibits candidates from coordinating with PACs or PACs from coordinating with with each other. But what it does say is that if a political campaign committee works in cooperation with a candidate, then any expenditure a part of that coordination is going to be considered an in-kind contribution. There's no allegation here that there was an in-kind contribution that was failed to be reported or anything of that nature. They just simply say they're not allowed to coordinate, which is just not true.
All right, so that's Lauren Topping speaking. She's the attorney for the ethics board. Also, again, wife of the guy that does all the opposition research for Jon Lundberg's campaign, who is filing this complaint against their opponent, Bobby Harshbarger. All right, so what does Lauren have to say? She says, now remember, this complaint is filed against Jack Johnson. Well, all of a sudden, there's nothing wrong with coordinating between campaigns and PACs. I mean, anyone who's ever run a campaign or worked in politics knows that when you run a campaign, you stay away from PACs. You don't talk to PACs. You don't mingle money with PACs because you don't want to be found coordinating with a PAC. It's a no-no. It's a no-no federally. It's also a no-no in the state. Even sitting senator, longtime incumbent Jon Lundberg said in his interview on the news that it was illegal. But here, interestingly, when the complaint is filed against the 16-year majority leader incumbent of the Senate, well, there's no problem coordinating. There's nothing illegal about a campaign coordinating with a PAC. So what did they do? They unanimously dismissed the complaint. Tom Lawless, of course, with all of the integrity that he has in him, decided to recuse himself from that vote. But what I want to take you to now is the proof we found in the midst of that complaint. We even tied money between the Jack Johnson campaign and this PAC, and they still did not care. So this Tennessee Conservatives PAC that ran mailers against me filed their reports, and we found this interesting PAC that had contributed $2,500. The Tennessee Reynolds American Inc. PAC. Now, this is a tobacco company out of North Carolina, and you might be wondering, why in the world does a tobacco company care about a state Senate race in Williamson County? And how would they know, right? It's a great question. How would a tobacco company in North Carolina who happens to have a PAC in Tennessee know to give money to a PAC that is only going to attack Gary Humble in a state Senate race? Why would they care? Well, I'll tell you why they care. It's because they're friends of Jack Johnson's campaign manager, Ward Baker. And here's what I want to show you how the money flows. So when you go pull up the report now, this is the report for the Tennessee Reynolds American PAC. This is the tobacco company's report. You can see that in late 2021, they had given $2,500 to Jack Johnson. Again, what's the relationship there? I'm assuming there's a relationship with Ward Baker because of how the money was transferred. I can only make that assumption. But what's absolute fact is that in late 2021, that PAC gave a $2,500 contribution to Jack Johnson. Now, here's what happens whenever the Tennessee Conservatives PAC forms. The Tennessee Reynolds American PAC files a subsequent report the next year during the primary, and you can see that on July 22nd, they give $2,500 to the Tennessee Conservatives PAC. But look what happens on the same day. On the same day, again, July 22nd, 2022, they dump $2,500 into the Tennessee Conservatives PAC, but they adjust the $2,500 they had given to the Jack PAC out on the same day. So the $2,500 they had previously given to the Jack Johnson PAC, they adjusted that money out on July 2nd of the next year, and on the same day put it into the PAC whose sole existence in life is to attack his opponent. So there's no question that that money was knowingly moved out of Jack Johnson's PAC into a PAC to attack his opponent. And they used sort of a third party to move the money around. Even more interestingly is when you go look up those campaign finance records for Jack Johnson's PAC, Jack Johnson never recorded those transactions. He doesn't record the receipt of the gift, and he doesn't record the adjustment of the gift. He just stays quiet on the subject. Unfortunately for him, the Tennessee Reynolds PAC reported the transaction, which is how we were able to find that Jack Johnson moved money from his PAC into another PAC whose treasurer is the same guy that his campaign manager runs for all of his campaigns, who ran a PAC that the only thing they did was run Grifter Gary mailers. Now, the reason I wanted to connect the dots on all of that is because when that complaint was filed against Jack Johnson, nobody cared. It went away in 5 minutes. Nobody asked any questions. Nobody was concerned about the money being moved over. There was no problem that Jack coordinated. But now, all of a sudden, when a PAC supporting a conservative candidate in the Tri-Cities is going up against a longtime incumbent in the Senate, well, all of a sudden, everybody cares about possible coordination. And in Ken Yeager's words, we just think this is suspicious enough. That this has enough suspicion that Tennesseans deserve to know the truth. We should look into this for Tennessee. Was there not enough evidence provided against Jack Johnson that perhaps it created enough suspicion for the registry to look at Jack's campaign finance issues? Nope, that wasn't enough. But now this is going to the registry, targeting a conservative PAC because they dare to challenge the incumbent. This is an important story because you should know, and you probably already know this, but this is just more proof in the pudding. This is the way that politics works. And as George Carlin used to say, it's just one big old club, and you ain't